Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're diving into a question that I think a lot of us have been thinking about for years. Can India ever reach that same kind of explosive economic growth that we saw in China?
Yeah.
We've got some really interesting research to help guide us from Professors Raghuram Rajan and Devesh Kapoor, and I think this will be especially helpful for those of you preparing for the UPSC exam.
Right.
But honestly, anyone who's just interested in the future of the global economy is going to get a lot out of this deep dive.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you know what makes this comparison so fascinating is that it's not just about like India's policies,
Yeah.
We have to look deeper at the very structure of their local governments
Yeah.
to understand why their path looks so different from China's.
Okay, so to set the stage, let's rewind a bit and look at China's economic transformation. We all know the story, right?
Yeah.
China's economy just skyrocketed, leaving India behind. Professor Rajan points out that one early advantage that China had was a surprisingly strong foundation in basic education, even back in the late 1970s.
That's a really good point, and it often gets overlooked. Widespread basic education meant that China had a workforce that was ready for the manufacturing boom that was about to hit. Think about the skills that you need for a manufacturing-driven economy. Basic literacy, the ability to follow instructions, operate machinery.
Right.
China had that in spades.
And then came the three major ingredients that really, I think you could say, turbocharge China's growth.
Yeah.
First, economic liberalization. They opened the doors to private business, welcome foreign investment. Now, India also pursued liberalization, but the impact wasn't nearly as dramatic.
Right.
What was the missing link there?
Well, the second ingredient is where things get really interesting. China implemented what's called an investment-led growth model,
Okay.
which basically means they poured massive amounts of money into infrastructure factories, anything that could boost productivity. And a lot of this was fueled by state-directed lending from banks.
So it's almost like they were playing this high-stakes game of economic chess,
Yeah.
making these bold moves to kind of control the board.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in India, a lot of that lending didn't end up in the most productive hands, right?
Exactly.
We saw a lot of investment going to well-connected tycoons. But those investments didn't always translate into widespread economic gains.
Right.
In fact, it contributed to a banking crisis around 2013.
Exactly. China was strategically directing their investment towards projects that would have broad, long-term benefits for the entire economy.
Yeah.
And India, unfortunately, saw more cronyism, more instances where the investments weren't really generating widespread growth.
And then there's the third ingredient, attracting foreign direct investment, or FDI. China absolutely mastered this, becoming like the world's factory floor.
Right.
FDI brought in not just cash, but vital knowledge and access to imports that I think India was really missing out on.
Yeah.
Professor Rajan uses this really striking example of an Indian businessman who's trying to invest in China, and he's treated like royalty. The local government bends over backwards, streamlining all the paperwork, making the process incredibly smooth.
Yeah, it really speaks volumes about their commitment to attracting foreign companies. And it's not just anecdotes either. Think about Elon Musk setting up a Tesla factory in Shanghai. It was operational in record time because the local government was so proactive in clearing every hurdle.
It makes you wonder if that kind of efficiency is even possible in most other countries.
Right. It highlights this crucial point that we often overlook, the power of local governments. Both China and India are massive, diverse countries. You can have brilliant economic policies at the national level,
Right.
but if those policies can't be implemented effectively on the ground, they're not going to have the intended impact.
This is where the comparison gets really fascinating.
Yeah.
It's not just about whether India adopted the right policies. It's about whether the structure of their local governments allowed them to put those policies into action.
Exactly. And Professor Kapoor's research really dives into this question, revealing why India's path has been and likely will continue to be so different from China's. He points to three key factors that we need to kind of unpack here.
Okay.
Understaffing in local governments, the lingering influence of the caste system, and a concept he calls precocious democracy.
Okay, so let's dive into these factors because I have a feeling they hold the key to understanding why India, even if it wanted to, couldn't simply replicate China's model.
Yeah, absolutely.
Professor Kapoor's first obstacle to India's local governance is understaffing. You might think the solution is simple, just hire more people.
Yeah.
But as Professor Kapoor points out, it's not that straightforward.
Yeah.
Many local governments in India have a surprising number of unfilled positions, even when unemployment is high.
That's right. And it's a puzzle that seems counterintuitive at first. Like, why wouldn't people be eager to fill these government jobs, especially in a country with a significant labor pool? It turns out that the structure and perception of government jobs play a role. And this ties into the second factor that Professor Kapoor highlights. The caste system, while officially outlawed,
Right.
its influence, particularly in local politics, remains a powerful force.
I can imagine how the caste system would really complicate things, even in a modernizing society.
Absolutely. Professor Kapoor argues that the caste system, in a sense, limits the power of local governments, creates conflicts when implementing policies, and even contributes to those unfilled vacancies that we were just talking about. There's a rather stark example from the state of Bihar, where there was a severe shortage of engineers,
Oh, wow.
yet these crucial positions remained unfilled.
That's heartbreaking. It seems almost unbelievable that an ancient system could still have such a grip on a nation's progress.
It really underscores the deep-seated nature of social structures and their impact on economic development. And this isn't an isolated incident. The caste system creates this web of allegiances and obligations that can sometimes paralyze effective governance. Yeah.
Especially at the local level.
So we have understaffed local governments, often grappling with the complexities of the caste system.
Right.
And then Professor Kapoor adds another layer. Precocious democracy. What exactly does that mean? And how does it factor into this equation?
It's a fascinating concept. Imagine a nation embracing democracy before it has fully developed the strong institutions of the civic culture that really allow democracies to thrive.
Okay.
It's like trying to run before you can walk. Professor Kapoor argues that this can lead to a vicious cycle. Local governments already strained struggle to provide quality public services, like education and healthcare.
Because they're understaffed and navigating the intricacies of the caste system, as we've discussed. It's a compounding problem.
Exactly. So what happens? Wealthier citizens, those who can afford it, opt out of these struggling public systems. They turn to private schools and hospitals.
Right.
This in turn makes them less inclined to pay taxes, further weakening the very local governments that they've bypassed.
It's a downward spiral eroding the foundation of effective governance.
Right. And it doesn't stop there. Because India's political landscape is so fragmented, local politicians are often prioritizing delivering these targeted benefits to their own constituencies. Think about it. Building a flashy new metro line is a lot more appealing to voters than, say, investing in improving the quality of rural schools.
It's the age-old dilemma of short-term gains versus long-term vision. But even with all these daunting challenges, Professor Kapoor doesn't paint a completely bleak picture for India's economic future, does he?
Not at all. It's important to acknowledge that even though India hasn't witnessed that same explosive growth as China, there has been significant progress. Education levels are rising. Infrastructure, particularly in crucial areas like the digital and finance sectors, has seen remarkable improvement, and India has the potential to become a global magnet for FDI.
So what needs to happen for India to truly unlock its economic potential and overcome these deeply rooted obstacles?
Well, one crucial factor is fostering closer cooperation between the central government and those often dysfunctional local governments. India's new coalition government might actually be the catalyst for more effective collaboration.
Okay.
It won't be as streamlined as China's top-down approach, but it could pave the way for a slower, perhaps messier, but ultimately successful growth path.
Kind of like the United States, another vast and diverse democracy that's had its fair share of political gridlock, right?
Precisely. And Professor Kapoor highlights another encouraging trend. We've seen some real success stories in implementing social programs at the local level.
Oh, yeah.
Things like expanding access to bank accounts, clean cooking gas, improved sanitation facilities. This demonstrates that local governments, when given the resources and the right incentives, can deliver tangible results.
So it seems like India might not become the next China, but it can certainly carve out its own unique path to prosperity.
Exactly. It's about recognizing India's distinct strengths and challenges and developing a model that works within its specific context.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful. And, I think it's particularly relevant for our listeners who are preparing for the UPSC exam. We've gone beyond simply comparing GDP figures and delved into the complex interplay of political structures, social dynamics, historical legacies that shape economic outcomes.
Yeah, and I think it underscores a crucial point for anyone trying to understand the global economy. Economics isn't just about abstract numbers. It's about people, institutions, and this intricate web of factors that drive progress.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but I want to leave you with a final thought-provoking question to ponder.
Okay.
What specific policy changes, in your view, could help India overcome these local governance challenges and truly unlock its economic potential? It's a question worth considering, whether you're an economist, a policymaker, or simply a curious citizen of the world.
It's a question with no easy answers, but I think the first step is understanding the complexities. And that's what we've aimed to do today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of global economics. If you found this exploration insightful, whether for your UPSC preparations or just your general understanding of the world, we'd really appreciate it if you'd like, subscribe, and share this episode. Until next time, keep those economic wheels turning.